I'm holding on to a Giant ATX One from I'd say 98 to 2000. So 3 years, 3 race seasons. This is my 2000 World Championship bike in Sierra Nevada, Spain, which happens to be the highest ski resort in Europe. And for me, that was kind of a big advantage. I just happened to be reminiscent of sort of the high desert Southwest mountains where I was living, Durango. And I felt super comfortable there. I had been there the year before, or 2 years before on Cannondale, and I kind of earmarked that as my golden opportunity to be world champion. I started racing pro in 1990. I self-proclaimed myself as a pro after I had come in first and expert, but won the overall and didn't take home any money. I decided I was gonna be a pro at that point. I was maybe a little skeptical when I first realized that I'd be racing this bike. In '98, I remember John Tomac riding for Giant. He was on the Giant Global team, and he was riding an Intense, and everybody else was riding this bike. So Johnny looked at this thing and was like, yeah, right, I don't think I'm gonna ride that. It worked really well for me because as it is right now, it's in an 8-inch suspension setup. A lot of the time in the US, especially on the West Coast, I would run a 6-inch setup. So I would just change it to a shorter shock and a shorter fork, and the whole bike would sit 2 inches lower basically, and worked really well for more kind of momentum pedally kind of tracks, which at the time, Big Bear and Mammoth and places like that, it suited it better. It has a really short rear end, so the chainstays on this bike are shorter than most, which made it work really, really well on steep stuff. And I think it kind of helped me, it enabled me to ride a little better on some of the stuff that I struggled with. When I took the position with Giant in '99, I had ridden 1 season with Yeti factory team and 5 years with the Volvo Cannondale team, which I felt like I had been groomed pretty well to be good with the media, good with the sponsors, and had a pretty good time with the Giant team because it was all Euros. It was a team based in Holland, and I enjoyed going to Holland as often as possible. So this bike's so old, it actually has a wood derailleur on it. At the time, it didn't really go with the color scheme, but they told me it was stronger than carbon fiber, so I figured we'd give it a shot. A lot of maintenance, staining, sanding. I was running kind of off-the-shelf stuff. This AC chain guide was really loud. If you can imagine the chain bouncing around in this aluminum contraption. So this bike wasn't the quietest, but I think the coolest part of this bike is the brake rotors that are sort of made for me. After the Worlds, they've made these Myles Rockwell World Champion brake rotors. I think the Hope 4-piston brake calipers are probably I would say the most advanced part of this bike, because at the time that 4-piston brake was sort of new. I felt like I could stop quite well with this bike, even though the rotors aren't that big on it. Before Worlds, we raced a World Cup in Slovenia, and there was this German engineer. His name was Dirk, and Dirk was doing either a senior sim or some kind of internship with Giant. I forget what it was, but he had some telemetry on my bike and was recording the travel and all of the time frames and cycles, or whatever you want to call it. So he urged me to go with a softer spring rate, and I'd been kind of reluctant to do that. So after Maribor, Slovenia was probably my favorite round of the World Cup at the time. Sort of struggled there, had a crash, finished outside the top 10, and after a few beers in the minivan on the way to Spain, I said that I'd listen to what he had to say. So it took a couple weeks, and anyway, so I go to Spain and we try out this new spring setup, and I'm like glued to the ground. This bike, like the last practice at the Worlds, I felt so dialed, and hooked up, I was pretty much destined to do well. Didn't know I was gonna win, but I felt really confident about the setup. Yeah, I think the other part, the key part for me switching to a Euro team was the Michelins. At that time, really no one else had put the kind of money into the tires that Michelin had. So in the late 90s, you know, they had a flat-proof system. They called it Le System. And it was very secret. And you could not get this anywhere. Our German engineer had in mind that this was gonna carry this brake cable. However, for most of the guys on the team, this is sort of a interface point with your knee. So we had to grind these things off so they wouldn't continually open your knees up and cause problems. Made it a lot smoother without it. So you can see a long time with a zip tie here. Caused some issues. Yeah, I think the best thing about this bike really was the short rear end. That really helped. And anyway, this bike brings back good memories.